Well, now let's turn to our first build along of the evening. And this is the card model of the service station that Mr. Egret has designed for us and is available on our website for everybody that wants to download for free in whatever scale you want. And Dave Rarick is tonight's modeler who's going to be starting to build his version of this service station. So, Mr. Rarick, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. Glad to be here. Tonight's presentation is going to be kind of lengthy, so I got to get going on it right away. And I'm hoping that I can do it without a lot of glitches.
Thank you.
Does that work?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is how I started. Cut out the front wall from the print. I use scissors, so I spare my blades a little bit. I had some difficulty in determining exactly where the tab fold lines were. So I measured out 3.5 inches for the width of the building and drew some vertical lines there. And that's where I'm going to be folding my tabs from. Now these are glue tabs. They're not used at all on the inner walls. So I just cut them off right where that line is. This slide shows the outer front wall with these glue tabs folded down 90 degrees. And this is before I've cut out the window openings. Now here I've cut out the window and door openings in the outside of the front wall and the inside of the front wall. And most of my tabs, I use my Starrett sheet metal scriber to scribe the lines so they bend, fold easier. You don't want to break through the surface of the paper, however. Just cause it like a crease. Once the inner wall is cut out, I glue it onto a 1mm chipboard, which I happen to purchase from Dick Blick Artist Supply. I glue it on with the Elmer's all-purpose glue stick. And then I roll it down securely with a roller. This is a veneer roller, but a wallpaper seam roller will work just as well. Here I'm going to have to cut out these window and door openings, which I'll show later. Here you can see they're cut out. The windows and the doors I haven't cut out yet, but they'll need to be cut out as well. And after the openings are all cut, I go around the edges with a marker. In this case, I use a dark gray. Now here's something that I wanted to bring out because this might be something new. I use a sticky label window method. If you'll recall from the first session, I said make an additional copy of all the pages printed on self-adhesive label paper. Now you want to cut around the outside of that print on the front wall using the inner wall as a template for size. And here you have it. I've cut out what is actually the front wall on the pressure sensitive label paper. And in order to remove that backing, I use tweezers because I can't grab them with my clumsy fingers. And just peel it off. And I leave my self-closing tweezers attached to one corner so I don't inadvertently get the thing stuck somewhere where it doesn't belong. After it's cut out, place it on your window acetate. You don't really have to push it down or roll it down or anything, just it sticks quite well. I used a heavy 10,000 acetate, again from Blick Artist Supply. You want to cut around the window sashes and the muntins using a sharp X-Acto or a scalpel. Use light pressure on the blade so that you cut through the paper but not the acetate. You should be able to feel a difference in the drag on the blade as you cut through the paper. And it's okay to cut all the way across. Like, if you want to go all the way across here to here, or all the way up and down, that's fine. Here I'm beginning to peel the paper off of the acetate. I pick up a corner or an edge, peel it off with my tweezers. You may actually be able to see where I have a knife cut right here that ran over the corner. That will not be noticeable on the finished model. If you have any glue residue left from the label, or maybe a little piece of the paper peeled loose or something, you can remove that using mineral spirits. Moisten the an applicator in mineral spirits and rub it over it. It cleans it right off. Now, to glue these together, I use canopy glue. That's usually used in model airplane building for gluing a canopy onto the fuselage. It's nice to work with because it dries really clear, and it also has good adhesion to the plastic. You might use like some wood glues and such. I'll tell you, you have to use it on porous material, which of course acetate is not. The canopy glue works real well on that. Try to avoid using excessive glue. You'll see later why. Now here I've glued the reinforced inside wall onto the back of the front wall. Again, using canopy glue, gluing it right over top of the acetate. And you want to make sure that it does not interfere with your glue tabs. If it's a little bit too wide, you won't be able to fold your tabs up to a 90 degree. They'll kind of stick out a little further, and then it'll mess up your build later on. Spread out the glue tabs, lay the wall on a flat surface, and position a heavy flat weight on the wall. Be careful not to disturb the position of the pieces, and then allow it to dry thoroughly, preferably overnight. And this is how that front wall should look after your glue sets hard. What I like about this sticky label method is you can get very narrow sashes and such on your window and still have the strength there because the paper is glued right fast to the plastic. So, and you don't have to worry about cutting these little tiny pieces. It really works slick. Now this is the interior office wall. It's drawn again as a front and back sides to the wall. Cut them out of the sheet, score the fold lines. The back side, they're cut off completely because you don't use the tabs. Here's what I use to do the scoring on my fold lines. I just use a straight edge and my Starrett sheet metal scriber. You can also use a ball end embossing tool, again, available from Blick. And again, you don't want to break that paper surface. This slide shows the front of the inner office wall cut out. And I used a pencil to mark the fold lines, which is right here on the edges. And that's measured out to the 3.5 inches, which is the same as the front wall. Here it shows it with the glue tabs folded back. This is the back side of the inner office wall. Cut it out from the sheet, trimmed it just a little bit narrower and a little bit shorter so that does not interfere with the glue tabs. And glue it onto your heavy chipboard, again using glue stick. and then cut that out and glue it to the back of the front of that wall. I use wood glue on this, but I actually don't like using it because there's too much moisture in it. It will cause your cardboard to warp. So I had to put a heavy weight on it and leave it dry for, like overnight, because otherwise it'll bend all over the place. This kind of weight I use to glue it down. I have a piece of steel bar stock. I don't know, it's about 2 by 3 inches or something like that. And screwed fast to a 1/4 inch plate. So it's pretty heavy. Now this is the rear wall of the station. Again, I just cut the whole thing out of the sheet. It's an inner and an outer panel. And notice again that I've drawn lines where the fold lines are on the edges. Paul forgot something on this drawing. He didn't put any glue tabs on the top of the building here, so I added them in. Just drew them in with a pencil. They're about a quarter of an inch wide, but that's nothing critical. You don't really have to measure them, just go by eye. And you cut out the outer wall and you cut out the back of it. Again, leaving it slightly smaller so you have tab clearance. By the way, these openings that are cut out here are all edged with your marker so that you don't have any white showing from your cut lines. Here I wanted to check just to make sure that my front wall and my back wall were the same width once I folded the tabs over, because if they're not, you're going to have a crooked building. The inner wall is laminated to 1mm chipboard using stick glue. Weighted it down until the glue dried. And I got 3 photos here. This is a back wall after I've added the glass windows and the back and the door. Again, I used that sticky label method to make these. Here you can see where I used a little bit too much canopy glue, and you can see where it squeezed out on the surface. If I was really worried about how this was going to look, I could actually back to my printer, reprint these parts and start over again. But we don't like to do that. So, this slide shows the structure floor. Cut it out and glued it to 1mm chipboard. I trimmed off a small amount here on both sides so that the width here is 3.5 inches, which is the same as the building. Go around all the edges with your dark marker. And this slide shows the service island, which was cut out of the sheet, laminated onto 2 layers of the chipboard, and then edged around it with the marker and then glued onto the base where it's indicated on the drawing. Now I go to the sidewalls, cut out the sidewalls. And I found it was very helpful to make these glue tabs about twice the width that they're shown on the drawing. Just extend them out. You'll see why later. Now again, any place where there's a fold, like here's one and here's one, you want to score that. So it makes it easier to bend it. Now this slide shows the end gable of the roof overhang. Somebody said, didn't understand how this was going to fit. Well, this is how it fits. This is your sidewall. It has to match up with the detail on this gable end. And when you score these fold lines for the top, it's important to make them terminate at the bottom, right at the top of the sidewall, so that when you bend the tabs over, they come right even with where the roof is going to sit on the sidewall. Here, I put some arrows on here. So these are fold lines and across here. You might notice that I made this tab a bit larger. Just drew it on a pencil. This might be hard to understand this, but this is an important part. The distance here from a fold line, which is right here and right here, has to be the same as this distance on the overhang, because otherwise it won't fit. And then you have to have this piece, which is a ceiling, trimmed to the same width as your front wall. And also your fold line on the gable end has to line up with that. They'll have to be in the same plane. Now here laid out the three pieces, the gable end and the two sides. Just lined them up. And then glue these side walls to the glue tabs that are on the ends here of the gable. And you want to put this on your cutting mat following the guidelines, or else use a rule, straight edge along the bottom here, make sure everything is plumb and straight. Now you want to turn the wall over to the back side. Sharply fold this end gable along the bottom of the fascia board and apply a small bead of glue into the V of the fold. Press it flat with your burnishing tool. This will double the thickness of the fascia, but do not glue the ceiling to the back of the front gable, because it has to fold forward 90 degrees here. This is the side tab that I mentioned to make it wider than it was drawn. Fold that over also 180 degrees and glue it to the sidewall, but not all of it. You want to fold this tab back out 90 degrees away from the wall before the glue dries. And I sometimes use a little handy dandy paper clamp here to act as a mini press brake, which comes in handy if you're trying to make folded line, pieces that are like 1/8 of an inch or smaller on each side of the fold, because otherwise you can't hold on to it. Now here's what we're after. You've got this edge here around the perimeter of the old overhang, and that's doubled over, so it's double thickness. Then you have this flange is created by these side tabs, and you want to take the ceiling and glue it here and on both sides. And ignore this printing in here. That's the back side of a sheet of paper that I reprinted. Now, you didn't glue the ceiling in place yet, did you? I hope not, because that comes later. Flip the three walls over to the front side, straighten the glue tabs, cut out the window and door openings. Make sure to color the cut edges with your marker. Cut out the garage door opening, same way, just inside of the trim board. And the restroom doors are the same way, cut out, colored with your edge. Now here's what I did on the garage door. I took the print that I made on self-adhesive label paper, drew a box around it about 1/8 of an inch wide, wider than the door. Cut that out and mounted on my clear acetate. So we're going to be using the sticky label method to open the windows, basically on the door. So here you have that label paper stuck onto clear acetate and the windows. Makes it much easier than trying to cut each window pane separately and keep from overrunning the corners and tearing the paper and what have you. Here's a window done the same way. You see a little bit of graying around here. That's from the mineral spirits wetting the paper. So once this is dry, I can glue it in place on the back side of the walls. That pretty much concludes the first session. Are there any questions? I guess not. Jim, back to you.
David, what scale are you building this in?
This is HO.
HO?
Yep.
Well, I tell you, I think it's going to be a beautiful model when you finish. I really like the way you do the windows.
Well, that was a technique that I just started recently. I actually learned it by watching a YouTube presentation of an English modeler. He models an N scale. He built some fantastic models. And this was his method of cutting out all the window panes and such. Works great.
Well, I'm really impressed with it. Really looks like you're doing a great job. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Jim.